So that's why, all players, regardless of genre or preferred genre or whatever it is, they all start with the fundamentals, and they all make sure that their fundamentals work well. The words of Michael Jordan, get the fundamentals down and everything else will fall.
This episode contains adult language and adult humor. Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults? If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Phill O'Neill. Sydney, Australia-based trumpeter Phill O'Neill, well, he's a busy guy. His resume contains numerous awards for his solo trumpet playing, a long career with various Australian military groups, and a successful freelance career. But Phill is also known for his innovative approach to teaching trumpet through his YouTube channel and his Learn Trumpet Now membership site. And he's still got more in store. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. Welcome to this episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, and I am joined all the way from Australia this time. We're international, folks, by Mr. Phill O'Neill. So, Phill, welcome to the Hang.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. Good to be here. Really excited.
Oh, it is absolutely my pleasure. One of the things, like when I first started doing this podcast, the original concept was it was going to be me sitting down in a room, preferably a bar, with another trumpet player, and just doing the hang like we do it after concerts or at conventions and things like that. But COVID screwed the pooch for all of us. But actually that was a blessing in disguise, because transitioning to this virtual way of getting together, I'm now actually able to talk to people that I would normally see, and so time and space are no longer a barrier. It's like a bad sci-fi movie. But I do want to have, I really wanted to have more international people. I'm based here in the US, but I wanted to have more international people. So you're my second Australian guest. So, kudos to you, my friend,
Awesome.
for doing that.
Who was the first? I must have missed that one.
Some guy, James Morrison or something.
That's the one.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting he's Australian because he's so well known, and even though I see him around fairly frequently, it's like, oh, that's right. Yeah, James is Australian and lives here. Like, oh.
Yeah. So James is my first Australian. You are number two on the list. So
Awesome. Huge privilege.
Yeah. So let's kind of just help people get to know you, help me to get to know you for that matter. And let's talk a little bit about the stuff that you've been doing. I know that, you have a solo career, you've done some military stuff. So let's kind of just talk about your career trajectory.
Yeah. So when I started, I started playing as a kid, as we all do sort of thing, but I actually got accepted to the army band when I was 17. I was actually 16 when I did my audition, and I auditioned for part-time, and just because the audition was there, it was about a month before my 17th birthday, and I knew that if I auditioned for the chair, I could do that part-time while I was studying, and then while going through the recruiting process would take months to achieve, sort of thing. So I was like, if I start it before I'm 17, if I get accepted for the job, then I can go from there, and the recruiting process just starts a month later. And they actually offered me a full-time job at that audition. I was like, well, do I finish my degree and get student loans, or do I go to the army band, which was like the job I wanted since I was 12 years old. Like I used to watch the military bands, and how versatile they were, and how they did so much different things. Like you'd watch them march down the street and look and sound amazing. Then you'd go and hear them play a concert and they'd look and sound amazing. And then they'd be playing a jazz club somewhere, and look and sound amazing. Then there'd be a big band playing at a fair, and a rock band playing at like a public gathering, and then they'd do carols. And coming from the community banding sort of thing, I was like, this is basically a community band full-time sort of thing. So I was like, that's amazing, I want to do that. Um, so yeah, I got accepted. Or I was offered the job, and after a bit of thinking, I was like, okay, I'm not going to worry about my student. I'm not going to build up student loans. This is the job I want. I'm going to go take it. And then the process started. I went to Kapuka, which is where the basic training for the army is. So everyone has to go through basic training. Be fit, be like learn how to do some strategies for in case you need to go to war, sort of thing. How to shoot, all of that sort of stuff, which was really fun, different experience. And then straight to the Kapuka band. So I was doing lots and lots of marching there, which was fun. And then spent some time in the Sydney band, the Melbourne band, and then after 10 years in the army band, because the army try to move you roughly every 3 or 4 years, and that way it gives variety in the job, so that you're not doing the same sorts of work all the time, because each band has things that they do more of than other bands just because of the location. And there was one band that they asked me to go to the Townsville band, and the Townsville band's attached to one of the infantry battalions, so they do a lot more of essentially a lot more pub gigs, and that wasn't something that interested me all that much. I'd recently got married, so my wife and I were looking to be close to family and to start having kids, and we wanted to have that support. And the Townsville band was the furthest location away from either my family or my wife's family. So, and so I made up my mind. Because of that, it didn't suit my professional objectives, what I wanted to achieve, and it didn't suit my family needs at that time. The Navy band had a position opening, and I auditioned for that and got accepted for that, which was fantastic because it put me in my wife's home location here in Sydney, and it suited my playing more. It was a more of a classical type position, which is what I wanted to focus more on than the commercial side of things. So yeah, I auditioned for that. I got accepted for that. Started the process. Went and did the Navy basic training, or a shortened version of that, because I had a lot of the skills from the Army. I just had to learn the Navy specific stuff. And then yeah, did another 5 years full time for the Navy band, which had some really incredible experiences. Once again, still very versatile. Like, I still played in the big band occasionally. I still had to play jazz occasionally. I was one of the sound operators for the band as well, so I had to run the mixing desk in the recording studio. So lots of versatility in there as well. But because of the skill set of the rest of the guys in the section, I wasn't needed to do as much of that side of things, and I was able to do the stuff that I enjoyed a lot more. And that was really cool. And we spend a lot of time away from home in periods. So you go on a deployment, you'll be away for 4 or 5 months, sometimes as much as 9 months. And after 5 years in the Navy band, I'd had my second kid by then, and I just got to the point where I was spending a little bit too much time away from home while my kids were that young. So I took my long service leave and started teaching at a school, Cranbrook School, which was it is a great place to work. I still teach there now, almost full time at the moment, which is really cool. And so I've been teaching there, and I've just been freelancing for the past 3 years and getting a lot more time at home with my kids while they're really young, which has been really, really important to me.
Yeah. Well, and that seems to be a very common story, especially you guys that are in the military bands, and you kind of get to that point where it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to build a family, I kind of need to settle down. Like here in the States, they have, especially, they have like the premier bands. So they have a lot of the bands that are based in Washington, D.C. And if you get those gigs, that's why a lot of those guys will stay in there for 20, 25 years, because you're in one place, pretty much all the time. So, but for the rest of the people that are, getting deployed and things like that, yeah, it can be tough when you're trying to raise a family. So, you know. But
Yeah, yeah, especially while they're really young. So my kids are like 6 and almost 4 at the moment. So, up until this point, they've really needed a lot more stability for me to be home more frequently, and they just require a lot more. But they're starting to be a lot more independent now,
yeah,
which is great. So I can afford to be away. I can afford to go and do a tour here and there when they come up, sort of thing, which is great as well.
yeah. And then they'll get to that age where you just can't wait to get out of the house. It's like, get me out of here for a while. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
but that's good. So, it sounds like, you certainly have had within the military career, you've had a fairly well-rounded experience, having to play a variety of styles and demands and things like that. But, you said that you were leaning towards more of the classical side as opposed to the commercial side. So I know that you have done a number of, won a number of awards as a soloist, a cornet soloist, a trumpet soloist.
Mhm.
Um, and I've always found that world to be a little fascinating. Yeah, because I never got involved in musical competition other than like marching band competitions and stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
or jazz band competition, but never like soloist competitions. So, what are some of the things that you got out of that process of being involved in these kind of solo competitions?
Yeah. So a lot of the solo competitions are run through community brass bands in Australia. And one of the things, like I always did them as a kid, and I guess it was, for me as a kid, it was either do music exams or do music competitions. And I did the music competitions for a couple of reasons. I got to choose my repertoire more often, so I got to choose my own solo more often than um, in an exam situation. It's like, here's your list of pieces to choose from, kind of thing. So that was kind of something that interested me a lot more. I got to choose pieces that I saw someone play the previous year, that someone a better player, sort of thing. Um, so there was that, and I also got, there's a lot more community engagement when you're doing a competition, like a solo competition, because you turn up, you spend a bit of time in the warm-up room, and quite frequently the warm-up rooms, it's one room where everyone who's competing in the section does their warm-up. And while there, you might play for a few minutes, and then you have a chat with someone who you saw last year or someone from a different band. And then once you play, you put your instrument in the case, and then you go and listen to the other guys play as well. So the competition isn't necessarily who comes first, second, third. The competition is more that, like, you hear the people who do something that you feel is slightly better than you, and you go, I like how that person did that. I'm going to go home and practice that so I can achieve that. And that was probably the part that I liked the most, was the community aspect. And it's also like, by being community, it's like you're working together to better each other, rather than in an exam. You don't see anyone else's exam. You just turn up, you get 5 minutes in your warm-up room by yourself, you do your exam, you go home, and then a month or two later you find out your results. um, Kind of vibe. So the solo competition thing was really enjoyable from that community aspect, where you got to know other people, you got to socialize with them, you got to hear them play and go, oh, that person did that, awesome. I like how they triple tongued that section, or I like that piece. I've never heard that piece before. I'll write that down. I'll get home and I'll order it and I'll give that a go. And that was really exciting for me. And also being able to speak to the adjudicator afterwards. Now, the adjudicator couldn't see who you were, but they'd write their comments down, and written comments are really helpful. But when you go and speak to the adjudicator afterwards and go, right, I played Slavish Fantasy in this section, here's what you wrote about me. Have you got any feedback, any other, like, something that you'd mind helping me with, sort of thing? And they'd have more to be able to help you develop than what you can actually write down, sort of thing. Because writing down things, especially when you're critiquing someone, can often come across as far more harsh than having the conversation, because you don't get the body language or the intent behind what they're saying. So that was all really helpful as well, and I found that be like, I found that really helpful for development for myself and for everyone else, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then as I said before, like, being a solo competition, you get to choose your own repertoire. So the fun challenge is, do like, you choose a piece that's like borderline too hard, so that you got something to really aspire and work very, very hard on. But you don't, like, if you choose something that's too hard, then you fall in a heap. But you want to choose something that's like really hard or really challenging, but achievable at the same time. So it really helps with goal setting as well. So that's something I find really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a really important skill, I think, for trumpet players, for everybody.
Mm.
Understanding how, if you want to make improvement, how you have to push your limits. But, sometimes people want to go overboard. It's like, if they decide they want to start running, and it's like I want to run a marathon, a month into my first time running. Well, that's setting yourself up for failure, because you're just not going to be able to do that. It's too far of a stretch. So it's like setting those goals that are just beyond where you are right now,
Mm.
and that will allow you to do that and to gain confidence and then gain momentum. I think that is so crucial. And I really didn't understand how that competition world worked. I mean, I'm experienced in the world of competitive martial arts, and I've been involved in that for 3 decades, 4 at this point. Gosh, I'm getting old. Uh, but it's it's kind of a different thing, but still it's the same. The evaluation processes and things like that go on, and the camaraderie, the friendships that you make, and the being able to observe other people and what they're doing, and be able to say, oh, I really like how they did this, and talk to people like, how do you train, how do you do this, how do you approach that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody's, at least I was lucky enough to be with a good group have like a really good group that we all kind of came up the ranks together,
Mm.
where it was every time we saw each other, it was, what have you been working on, what have you been having trouble with,
Yeah.
how did you I'm having this problem, how did you fix that? And just all of us sharing. I think that's the only way to take any art, trumpet playing being an art, to take it to the next level, because we have to be able to share our experiences.
Yeah, and like, learning through that competition, like, you compete, like, as you're saying, you do martial arts, like, someone gets you in an armbar one year, you go back and you figure out how they got you into that armbar, because you don't want to be hit by that again the next year, sort of thing. So you go and train that so that you have a counter move to that armbar, so you don't get hit there, sort of thing. So it makes you better whilst you're getting better with your friends, sort of thing. And that's how I view the competition. It's the competition, it's friendly, but it's a friendly competition to help everyone around you better themselves, so to speak.
Yeah, so you didn't go up and like punch people in the lip, or like break their fingers or anything before the
No, no, we always threaten to in Australia, but we're only ever joking. So, the number of times you hear a trumpet player go, I've got this beginner kid who just achieved this amazing thing that they shouldn't have been able to. So I'm going to give him 5 years before I break their teeth.
yeah.
It's never meaning,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the vibe for every musician who I come across. We all have a teaching aspect to our career. And the teaching aspect to our career it's not necessarily because we want to pay the bills. It's because we want to share what we have learned over our careers to develop, so that we can pass that on to the next generation, so they can achieve greatness sooner than we have achieved it. Like, you look at, we aspire to all the greats, Herb Albert, sort of thing. We look at Wayne, who's still around, Conrad Gozzo, you've got Phil Smith, like all of those great players, Bud Herseth. Now we aspire to be those guys for an aspect that they achieve. But if you listen to the current people in the lineup of those jobs, equivalent, they're technically superior to what those older guys were, because those older guys passed on their knowledge and it was constantly evolving, we were finding new ways to do things, efficient ways to do things, and that knowledge gets passed on through generations, and the next generations get better than us. You
Right.
know, and that's what we hope for. That's what I hope for, at least. And you know, everyone I know, we hope that the people we pass our ideas and our development onto can achieve them sooner than we could, so they can then figure out ways to go beyond what we can do today.
Yeah, absolutely. I when they go back to my martial arts days as well, but that was one of the things that was always drilled into me by my instructors, is that the responsibility of, and this is always what they always say, the responsibility of every generation is to surpass
Mm.
the generation before them. And that was like, oh, okay. That, and you kind of have like that at first. It throws you off because you're like, oh my god, these people are so great, regardless of what art it is. If you're talking about trumpet, you're looking at the Bud Herseth, the Phil Smiths, the Gazos, and it's like, there's no way in the world I can become better than that. But if you have that attitude, then the art's going to die. So the attitude has to be, wow, those guys are so great, I'm going to aspire to that. And whether you hit it or not, that's a different story. But at least you have that as a mark, and you start working towards it. You learn the things that they learned, you apply the principles, you do the things, and then hopefully you will meet and then eventually surpass. And the surpassing is usually because you have more knowledge to draw from. So everything that the generation before us knew, now we have access to that. Plus
Mm.
all the new stuff that's coming out, and we're learning. The instruments are improving. We're having better manufacturing process, more efficient instruments that we're working at. We understand things, the components of like how nutrition and psychology and things like that feed into our abilities to perform. And so we have all of these different things that we can layer onto the existing skill sets and knowledge, and then that helps us to move it to the next level.
Mm. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So with your teaching, so because I know you not only have a studio, but you have quite the burgeoning YouTube channel where you have a lot of information you put, and that I think is also one of the things that's really helping us to really move forward, is that people can get they can, number one, they can hear so many great players. In the old days, it was really hard. I mean, I'm from the really old days, we're passing around cassettes and
Yeah.
things like that, and listening on albums. But now you can listen to any trumpet player, pretty much in history. If they're recorded, you can listen to them. You can watch them. You can sit and watch a YouTube video, and you can see how people approach the instrument physically. And so I think all of this adds to that layer. So how do you view the power of technology as a tool for advancing the level of trumpet players in this next generation and generations to come?
Look, I think it's great, and it's a really helpful tool to use to help that next generation. So things like as you were saying, like even when I grew up, cassette tapes were still a thing. Like, it was the 80s for me, so everyone had Walkmans and sort of thing, and we were listening to those tapes, and but to get your hands on them was difficult, especially like I grew up, we didn't have a lot of money for me growing up, so you to get to get a Walkman was a huge expense. It was like it was a birthday one year, and I had to look after it. It had to last me until from 10 years old through to 15 years old, sort of thing, when the Discman came out, or those sorts of things. And then it was one Discman to last me for eternity, sort of thing. And then, but to get recordings and to find recordings, you kind of had to know who to listen to, and that's becoming less and less. Like, you don't necessarily have to know. I know that if I listen to that person, that's the sound I want to create. We can go and listen to lots and lots of different recordings of different people, and over time we'll develop who we enjoy listening to, and our search narrows down. Or you can do essentially what I try to do, and I discovered a couple of years ago that my search and my listening was becoming too narrowed, and I wasn't looking for new things to listen to, because I was like, I really like listening to this recording of Harkin, or I really like listening to this recording of Wayne, or I like this recording of Chet, and I kind of stuck to those things for a while. But then with streaming coming out, I was like, okay, what happens if I just type in trumpet? What comes up? Let me try and find new artists, people that I've not heard of before. And then like through technology, like by having streaming services now, like quality is not necessarily as high as what a vinyl recording is, or what a CD, or like I know Tidal does full wave format, so that's the full CD quality, but it also has a lot limited. It's the smallest library. So I can go through like my YouTube Music, or I can go through like Spotify or Apple Music, and I can discover new artists that way, and then go, yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to go and buy the full download, or the CD, or the vinyl if it's available, sort of thing, and get that higher quality sort of thing. So I find it's really helpful to discover new things. Is where I see the positives. I find it really helpful with my teaching, because I can teach a student something, and that can be whether I teach it's an online lesson or whether it's an in-person lesson. I can teach a concept, I can demonstrate that concept, but to replicate that when my student goes into their own practice room is really challenging. It needs that constant reminder, that constant repetition. And that was something I was discovering. I was learning for a while from Dan Mendelow, who was the principal trumpet for the Sydney Symp for 34 years or something, And if anyone's been to the Sydney Opera House, that thing is enormous. It is the biggest concert hall I've been in, behind the Albert Hall kind of thing. And it's probably just as big as the Albert Hall. But every concert I've seen at the Albert Hall, everything's mic'd. Where at the SSO, at the Opera House, they don't mic anything. So we used to joke, and we still do, we call it the barn. And for Dan to fill that hall like he did, I remember choosing some of the worst seats just to hear the brass group and see how they projected and filled the entire hall. And it didn't matter which seat I sat in, that brass group just had the sound that just filled the entire hall. So I was learning from Dan to try and open up my sound and get that bigger, that projected sound without being really loud on the stage and, deafening the people in front of me. And I remember I'd go to him and have a lesson, get everything sounding really good, working efficiently, and feel really good about my playing. Then I'd go and over about a month, I would slowly decline from the things that he taught me. Not because I'd forgotten them, but because I just needed that extra reminder. So after about 3 or 4 weeks, I'd book in my next lesson. I'd go back to see Dan. He'd get me back to having that open sound, that big projection again, that efficiency. And then I go back to playing my gigs, and and then over a little bit of time, it started to deteriorate, but it'd take a little bit longer. So in the sense of teaching, I really like using it because I teach the concepts in a lesson and demonstrate the concepts, get the student to work on the concepts, get a grip of the concepts. But then with the videos that I have, they can then go back, watch the video to get a reminder of what my concept is and a demonstration of my concept, and they can work along with that video just like a lesson and have that little reminder, so they can essentially go longer between lessons if they're dedicated to sitting to it and going, now, how did Phill address that? How do I work on that? How did I get that to work efficiently during my lesson? Watch the video, come back, sort of thing. And that's where, like in addition to my YouTube, I give out lots of generic advice to help people. But then I feed that into like a membership thing where it's like you have your lesson and then you go back to your videos, and it's a bit more specific with development for that. So like all the guys who are in my membership, they can go, right, here's my lesson, have my lesson once every month, once every 2 months, whatever. What are the concepts that I worked on in my lesson? Go and follow those with the videos in the membership sort of thing. And then, and grow from that. So that's like, I find that's really helpful for development as well. Then, it goes even further from that, because as like I'm wearing a Positive Trumpeters Worldwide shirt, which turned up for me yesterday, which is a fantastic Facebook group, but it's not a great group because like the moderators do a great job, but it's not a great group because of the moderators. It's a great group because of the community. And as trumpet players, as I was saying before, like we're all teachers because we want to pass on. But we're not just teachers of a kid who's in year 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way through to finishing schooling to help them develop as a kid. We're all students, no matter how good we are, and we learn from each other. So it's like, someone goes into the group and forms a community and goes, right, I'm really working on this. How do I break through this milestone? And then you watch on the Facebook group, there's probably within a couple of hours 30, 40 comments of, well, I did this, or you should do this, but, like worded differently. It's basically, well, I did this to achieve the result you're working on. Have you tried it? And everyone shares their own journey to help each other out. And so those reasons are how I see it being developed and how I see it advancing trumpet players in the future generations far more. The negative side, though, is there's also a lot of bad advice, and when I say bad advice that I don't agree with, and advice that I see a lot of other people that I spend time with, a lot of great players, don't agree with as well. So we try, so because, opinions, as your quote, this content creates adult content. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one. So,
and most of them stink.
Yeah, exactly. So for that reason, there's gonna be stuff out there that's not helpful to the development of people's playing. So if you're looking for advice, it can be hard to filter through what works and what doesn't work, especially because frequently bad advice might get you initial results but be detrimental further down the run, sort of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, things like, for argument's sake, you've had Walt Johnson on this podcast, and like I've got his book Double High C in 10 Minutes, and that has some awesome advice in it, right? It has some fantastic advice in it, and I recommend everybody check it out and go and learn the skills in that book. But my opinion is that as a long-term kind of thing, having the two different embouches is something that only a very advanced player should have. And if someone who's coming in with 2 years of experience goes, right, I'm going to do the altissimo embouche, I'm going to curl my bottom lip in and do those sorts of concepts, I feel like that for an inexperienced player is the right advice at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that book has so I prefer to have like one setting and use throughout the whole register. And the reason why I prefer that is because when you have large interval jumps, especially coming from up down, if you're changing embouches, it can be easy to miss pitch, and that's why I stopped using that method, because I was mispitching too frequently. And it takes, but Walt does it amazingly well. So this is not me criticizing Walt. It's me saying that it's the right piece of advice at the wrong period, sort of thing. And it's just an example that I'm thinking of now.
Yeah. Well, I think I think the same is true with fundamentally anything. Playing trumpet is a very unique, individual and intimate process, and it's like how many different sizes of mouthpieces are there? How many different kind of horns are there?
Yeah,
How many different
yeah,
methods are there? And
yeah,
you know, it's because what works for one person isn't going to work for everybody. I mean, like, so for me, like for example, I really gravitate towards like the Stevens Costello method, uh,
yeah, yeah,
because I've got my jaw structure, I've got a pronounced underbite. So I am naturally I play naturally in what he calls an upstream, or or what people call upstream. So I play with a lower set on the top lip. Air goes this direction, and that's my natural way of playing. So the exercises that
yeah.
he has to try and teach someone that doesn't do that naturally, I don't have to work at it. Like the statics and stuff
Mm,
like that, I could do those real easy because I'm just already set up for it. So it works for me. Now,
mhm.
what I found is like the Caruso method does not work for me, you
Yes.
know,
Yep.
and I get really, really stiff and I have a lot of problems with it. So,
Yeah.
and I've talked to a lot of people who are familiar with it, and especially people that are familiar, like the Reinhardt method. And they say, oh,
Yep.
yeah, because of your jaw structure and the way you are, the Caruso method tends not to work for a person with your particular physiological
Yep.
setup. So don't do it. Don't play pedal tones. So is it just, but I don't want to get online and start saying, oh, don't pedal tones are going to destroy your embouchure. Well, there are a lot of players that use
Yeah.
pedal tones, and like
Yeah.
Arturo Sandoval preaches pedal tones. Arturo can play
Yeah.
circles around me. So it's
Mhm.
finding the thing that works for you, and when
Yeah.
you find something what works for you, do it, but then don't
Yeah.
discount anything else. Be willing to look at things and try and,
Mhm.
like you're saying about Walt's method, it's like, okay, well, this works and this works in this situation. So I've got that in my toolbox. And
Yes.
I think that's where we sometimes we get too much tunnel vision and become ego driven by things, and we don't want to admit that we don't have all the answers.
Yeah. Like the number of times Walt's method with his altissimo embouchure has got me through the gig. Like I was learning through Tristram Williams for a long time, and I remember him saying to me, "Your practice routine is designed to fix the flaws or fix the bad habits that you allow into your playing to get through the gig. Now, by learning Walt's method, and learning that altissimo register and that embouchure and that sort of thing, there's times where you get to, three quarters of the way through the third set and things are just burning. It's not a great day. It's not working. What have I got in my toolbox to get me through this gig? And I'll go, right, sweet. This has gotten me through gigs many times. Use that method to my advantage. And there'll be times where I use that. And the reason why it's not my preferred method of playing is because it's a different sound when I use that to what I use in the rest of my range.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, I was like, okay, I want the same sound in my entire register, especially as like a more classical type player. I want the same register from pedal C through to double C, right? Same sound, same, so to achieve that, it's about using, the same embouchure setting, so to speak, right? And I find like it's a good foundation. But like if, as I said, if I'm burning and it's hurting, it's more important to get through the gig than it is for me to be fundamentally technical the way that I want to be playing. Get through the gig. That's a tool that I have and use. Use it, get through the gig, and then after the gig, go, right, cool. So I need to work on this, this, and this for me to be able to play the technical way that I want to be able to get through it. But, you know, um, yeah. So that's learning all of these different styles is really helpful, but I feel like the downside is through the online world, you can be learning these different ways and create confusion
Hmm.
um, in a lot of players, and you find it more with, as I like to call them, enthusiast players. So people who play for a hobby, and that's why I started coming online more, was to help those players because um, it can be challenging to find structure with so much on offer. And more often than not, you can, for argument's sake, like you brought up Caruso, you can use, Caruso might work for people. The Bill Adams might work for other people. The Stamp works for other people. And all of those sorts of things. And like a lot of the new technique books that I'm seeing coming out, there's similar exercises in all of them. Like I will happily use exercises from the Caruso book, even though I use the Maggio and the Stamp school of like process of teaching sort of thing, and that's how I find playing is more beneficial. But then if you go and like you can go and use exercises from all of the different things to create something different. If I want to work on flexibilities, so to speak, I don't have to play just the flexibilities from the Stamp book. I can go and get flexibilities from the Adams routine. I can go and get them from the Arbans, from the Bin Lay. The only difference, so to speak, is that I'll approach them the way that I've learned through my Maggio routine rather than through the Caruso school of thought. And I feel like that's where things are really useful. But finding which method is working for you, or which, it's not even method, it's more approach. Yeah. Which approach works best naturally for each individual player, I find is really useful. But for a lot of enthusiast players, they haven't necessarily understood what the concepts are because they play the exercises without reading the transcript or without learning from a teacher who has understood that and demonstrated that, to be able to pass that on. So that's where the challenge, that's my opinion. So, as I said before, opinions like arseholes. Like it's more about, you can use almost any exercise to better your playing, but it's more about the approach to how you do it.
Yeah.
And then going a step further from that, it's about how you structure what you're doing to get the most results out of it. So if you only ever try and play high and loud, then you're only ever going to be able to play high and loud. If you only ever try and play low and soft, you're only ever going to be able to play low and soft kind of vibe. You need to be able to, and this is especially important of enthusiasts or hobby players who, if you work a day job and you've got kids and you've got all of these other things, all these other responsibilities, you need to be able to have a game plan to perform well, which is why that's the biggest part of why I started doing the online. There's no point in just doing flexibilities because you need better endurance and better range. There's no point in just doing long tones or even as I see so often, you tell a student long tones, oh, okay, I'll sit there. You're not going to gain anything from that. But if you sit there and you think, okay, what am I trying to achieve with my long tones? I want more efficient playing. So you look at the benefits you want, from long tones, I want to be able to play with a nice sound, and I want to be able to play in tune, and I want to be increased in efficiency with how I play. So I want the right airstream. And so if you sit there and you go, okay, I want to play my long tones so I can get those aspects, and you think about, okay, so take my good breath in, good clean articulation to start, and focus on creating the sound that I want to create in tune, then you'll get a better grasp of it. But if you do that every day, yeah, you'll get good at long tones, but what about if you need to go through scales, like in your piece? There's so often we have to go through a scale quickly. If you've not practiced them, you've not understood that. You've not learned that skill. So that's where, structure of your practice, especially when you're short on time, so that you can touch on all aspects of your playing, but you understand what you're trying to achieve with that aspect, then you can actually advance on that, and you want to touch on everything. Like my 30 minutes a day routine that I give out to everyone and try to share everyone. It's the concept is that you have 1 or 2 days where you work hard on a fundamental and you try to really push yourself and improve on that, and then another day you come back and you just do the part that you couldn't do. So you just touch on the part that was a little bit out of reach to try to make that a little bit better. And every day has different focuses, so that over the course of a week, in if you follow it, you're improving your playing every week through improving 1 or 2 aspects every single day. And then you play music, because we don't play the trumpet to play exercises. We play the trumpet to play music, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and actually, this is something that I've for years in my teaching, I told my students, and it's in everything. I think one of my favorite sayings is, how you do anything is how you do everything. So when we think, whether it's music, martial arts, business, anything like that, I think the most crucial thing is clarity of purpose. So you're talking about, like, what's the purpose of long tons? I think the first thing that people usually miss, whether it's on trying to develop a practice routine or trying to pick a new horn or mouthpiece, is what's the purpose? What are you trying to accomplish? And the clearer you are on your purpose, then that will dictate what you need to do to accomplish it. So I think, like, when you're talking about hobbyists and things like that, because I'm not a full-time professional musician anymore. I still play. I play regularly, but this isn't my regular. This isn't my sole source of income. So I have limited time to practice. So when I do practice, I have to be very surgical about what I practice. And there are days, like, if I get called to do a specific gig, it's like, I need you to do, somebody calls me and says, can you do a Latin gig? I'm like, oh, well, I haven't played Latin in a while. So I got to get my Latin chops together. So that means that everything that I do in the limited time that I have to practice needs to be to get my skills for that job ready. I don't have time to play bebop. I don't have time to go through the Arbans and things like that. It's like everything I do needs to be geared towards getting me ready to do that job, much like you're talking about, having a tool in your toolbox for the chops.
Yeah.
If I don't have a gig coming up, then my practice can be on developing skills that are waning, or I can structure my practice and say, well, I really want to work on my articulation. So instead of practicing at Arbans, maybe I take, I play a lot of, R&B stuff. So, okay, well, I'm going to practice, the lick from September, or I'm going to practice Superstition. I'm going to practice something that's got some tight articulation in it. And I'll do that as my articulation study, just keep looping it. So not saying that anything is a waste of time, but there are, if 99% of your playing is this, don't spend your time on that 1% over here. If you've got limited time, if you've got unlimited time, yeah, go for it. But if time is a crunch, do what you need to do before you do what you want to do. And I think sometimes that's the problem that we get on the internet things, is that, and people are coming from basically a good place. They're wanting to help people. Yes, but they're not thinking about, well, this is what I did, but I don't know your situation. So that's why I usually try to tell people when they ask for advice, well, you got to think about what is your situation. And then when we have a better idea what your situation is, here are the steps that you can take to, or here are the things that I've done in the past that are similar to that. But like you said, opinions are like assholes, and I'm the biggest one out there. So
and the other thing as well, and that's where, like, this technology thing is really, really useful, is because it's so easy for us to post a video of what we're actually doing.
Yeah.
So and that's something that you see so often. Like, as soon as, like, especially on this group, you jump on and someone goes, I'm really struggling with getting my C in tune, but like my low C sharp and my C in the staves flat, and then my C above the staves flat, and what's going on? And like they'll post as a text, and the first comment is always, "Can you share a video so we can see what's going on and offer you more specific advice to help?" Because it might be the mouthpiece is wrong. It might be that they're playing on, a 150-year-old trumpet that was designed to be played in A, and they've pulled the slide in to be B flat, sort of thing. It could be that they're too tight on their embouchure, sort of thing. There's so many different variables that by seeing someone do it with video or in person, we can be a lot more specific on the advice, sort of thing. Downside is we're doing teachers out of a job.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's always space for that. It's from the entrepreneurial space, the stuff that I do as a consultant and things like that. One of the big things they always say is, give your best information away for free. Don't give away your B stuff. Give away your good stuff, because if people look at the advice you give for free and go, damn, that's so good, that really is a game changer, then when you have a product to sell, then they're more likely, it's like, if that was the free stuff, what's the paid stuff going to be like? And so it builds trust and it builds credibility. But then I think it also opens the door for communications with people. And there's always going to be a space for teachers of all kinds, because you may be the best teacher in the world, but only for certain things and for certain people. And there's going to be something where you're going to have a student that comes up to you, and I'm not saying you individually, but I'm just saying,
you as a generalization.
The general, even I'll point it back at me and say, I'm a really great teacher for a lot of things, but there's certain things that are just not in my wheelhouse. And when people would ask me, about specific things that I didn't have the right answer, or didn't have the background or the knowledge, I'll go, well, I really don't know, but who's an expert on this person, this is who you should go talk to. And some people go, well, why would you do that? Because you're going to lose a student. I said, no, I'm actually going to gain a student. I'm going to keep a student, because they know that I'm more concerned about their betterment than anything else. And that develops that level of trust, which then that opens it up for me to be able to share stuff that maybe, I wouldn't have generally done. So, and then also I learned from it too, because, if I send somebody to another teacher, they come back and I'll go, well, what did they tell you? Oh, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I never thought about it that way. Okay, good. Boom, put it in my toolbox. So
Exactly. Yeah. So, there's so many positives with that, like it's only going to make the community of trumpet playing better, and as much as we like to the old trumpet player joke, hi, I'm better than you kind of thing exists. It's more like, and you see more people trying to help people through this internet thing, and it's because you can take 3 minutes, scroll through YouTube for a tutorial, and and as you said, you find someone who you relate to and you trust, and you learn from them. Like there's a euphonium player in part of my membership, because the way that I teach is something that resonates with him. Like I'm not teaching him euphonium, I'm teaching him fundamentals of brass playing. Yes, between the euphonium and the trumpet there's similarities, but he just likes the concept of how I approach practice, how I approach community, how I encourage people to go and document their progress. And that's something that so many people are scared of. Why shouldn't we document our progress? Because we can easily go for months and go, well, I'm not getting any better. And then you get into a rut, and then you start getting worse. Where if we go, okay, this week my primary focus is, like, for argument's sake, I'm giving away Scales Sunday at the moment. So every Sunday, Sunday Australia time, there is another scale attached to a group of fundamentals. So it's like the first, like there's, so you learn the notes. So it's got the notes written there with the fingerings written there. So you can go through and slowly learn the notes of the scale and the arpeggio. Then you do another one where it's like working on articulation. So it's the same scale, but it's a little bit faster. The focus is to improve your articulation whilst you're still learning the scale. Then you've got some slurring exercises based on the same scale. Some fast tonguing exercises where you can either double tongue it or single tongue fastly using the same scale. Then intervals using the same scale. And then inverting it sort of thing, so you're going from the top to bottom. Because, like, I know for myself, I get a bit lazy sometimes. I'm good at practicing bottom to top and back down again. But how often do I go top to bottom and back up again? Like, that's something that I need to, that I know that I was like, okay, I need to be mindful that I need to practice my scales inverted as well as up and down sort of thing, and inside and backwards. So every Sunday I'm releasing this video with, the sheet music and all that sort of stuff, to help kind of structure, I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit, help structure sort of things to give that goal. But at the end of the week, right, so if you go, right, at the start of the week, I'm working on E flat major and I'm struggling with E flat major at the beginning of the week, if you document it and you go, right, I know that I'm struggling with E flat major, you can either record yourself doing E flat major at the beginning of the week and listen back and go, oh, I'm really not good at that one, and then practice it for the week, right? And as I said, like the scale Sunday thing that I'm doing only takes about 5 minutes to do it. You get to the end of the week after practicing, spending 5 minutes on that one scale every day. At the end of the week, you could record yourself playing it and you document how much you've progressed on that one scale in such a small amount of time. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go and do that one scale every day for a month to develop it, to get it sound great, because you can go, right, this week is E flat major. Next week is E major, for argument's sake. And then you change scales every week, and you might not have it perfect after a week. But when you move on to the next one and go on the next one and practice that one, you'll find that even though you're getting more challenging with the key signatures, you're learning them faster because it's a new goal every week. And then once you've gone through all the majors, you can either go, right, I'm going to go back and do all my majors that I couldn't get nailed at the end of the week set aside for that week. You can go back and go, right, I'm going to go back and do E flat major again because I wasn't happy with my progress on that. And because you've documented it. And then over the space of 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 1 year, 10 years, you go back and you listen to the recordings that you've taken of yourself as a journal, and you go, wow, I'm so much better at this than when I started it back there. And it helps you be encouraged to keep practicing, to keep going, to be motivated, to search for the next goal.
Right. There's there are two things that made me think about. The first is that I think, who's the first person? I think Tony Robbins was the first person I ever heard say this. Is that we have a tendency to overestimate what we can accomplish in a year and underestimate what we can accomplish in a decade. So I think so many people get frustrated because they're not seeing rapid results. Everything takes time and it takes work. So it's having that realistic kind of thing of okay, well, if you have never played an F sharp major scale in your life, you're not going to be able to get it to the same speed that you have like your C major scale, which you spent more time working on. So okay, you can't compare apples and oranges in that case, even though they're both scales, but they're different keys. And the second thing, and I had always said this to my martial arts students, like, I really wish that I videotaped everybody on their first day of class. And then when you come into my office being frustrated about why, how you feel like you're not making improvement, to show you now and you then. Because what happens is when we improve is that our knowledge and our ability to identify what is possible increases. So when you're a beginner trumpet player, you have no idea what you're supposed to be able to do. After a year of playing, you have a concept, and you may have it over here on that C major scale and not on the F sharp, but you're feeling like, oh, because I can't do this as well as I do this, then I'm not making progress. Well, no, you are making progress, but you just can't see it. You're aware that you're capable of more. You're just not there yet. So yeah, I love that idea of doing documentation, and I think that everybody should do it. The hardest part is doing it in a mindful way, a non-judgmental way. You know, you can't beat yourself up for it. It's just like, okay, well, if I'm not good at this, right, this sucks. All right, well, if I wanted to get better, me, being frustrated and angry or whatever isn't going to solve it. It just means it's time for me to hit the woodshed and practice that skill.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something that pretty much since the iPhone came out, sort of thing, in I think it was 2007 or something like that. Pretty much since it was common that we had relatively good quality cameras in our phones, in our hip pocket all the time, every student who has learned from me has had to record something frequently. So usually so like at Cranbrook, the school that I teach at, and this is really good because it's part of the culture of the entire music department, is there are performance opportunities every week. And so I get all of my students have to perform a solo every single term. All of those solos are recorded, and all of those recordings get uploaded to a file for those students. So if I've got a student, like I've got students in year 10 who I've been teaching since year 7 at that school, they have probably 15 recordings of them performing as a soloist in their file that they can go back when they're feeling discouraged and not like they're not achieving anything or like they're not growing. We just go back in their lesson and go, well, let's have a listen to this performance that you did here, right? And let's compare that to your last performance, right? And it's good because it puts a reality check. So if you have a bad performance and it's a one-off, you can go, well, that performance, at the end of term 2 wasn't as good as my performance in term 1, but my performance that I did for this other like festival that was done for the school in the same term was far better. It's like, well, that's that was an off one. I remember, like, baseball's not huge here in Australia, but a friend of mine who now lives in the US told me years and years ago, there's a concept among pitchers in baseball. Out of 5 pitchers, 1 will be shit hot and awesome, 1 will be woeful, and then 3 will be pretty good. And it's those 3 that are pretty good that it determines how good the pitcher is, sort of thing. And if you think about that, especially the lower, like the people who invest less time into their playing, 1 performance will be awesome, 1 you will not be happy with at all, and 3 will be, yeah, that was pretty good, I had a lot of fun. Those 3 are determined how good you are today, but there will be a time where your shit hot performance becomes your 3 regular performances, sort of thing, through constant, continuous structure and continuous development. You can do that. And the other thing as well that I've spoken about a lot is a good mindset. The mindset can completely control how good you can and can't play. If you are in a good mindset and one of continuous development and that, like, thinking that way of, how am I developing today? How am I going to get better today? You'll be constantly growing. You'll be constantly playing at or near your best. But if you start getting into that down kind of period where you're self-doubt, I'm going to split that note, I hope I don't spray that, I don't feel good today, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to start getting worse, sort of thing. And that mental side of playing is so important. And like, I found that during like Australia's, like especially in Sydney, we're only just starting to come out of lockdown now. Now we haven't had a lot of of cases in the grand scheme of worldwide. But we've spent most of the past 2 years locked down. There's been very little gigs going on, very little playing together. Most of the teaching has been online, and so naturally for me, I started doubting my playing, started to doubt my abilities, because like this practice room I've got a great studio, but it's a really dead environment, and to get it to sound like a great concert hall, it doesn't happen. So you hear all imperfections in my playing. So I start to, and I've been playing for 30 years nearly. And I started to doubt myself, and I started to go on that downward spiral. And then I have to go, okay, let me go and check out some of the recordings I've done, check out some things that I've been doing recently versus older. I go, okay, cool. Start to pick myself out of that. So through documenting, and I document a lot on YouTube and on my Facebook page and Instagram, but mostly on YouTube for me. But there's a lot that I document and don't post and don't share. So that that positive mindset is really important. Like the late Bill Broughton, trombone player from the Los Angeles studios, he moved to Australia and was a mentor of mine in my late teens. And he always said, if this is right and this is right, this will be right. And that's something that we can all really remember, and, so your mind has to be right in, as Tom Hooton said on one of his Instagram lives recently, put our ego aside and think about today's development. If today is not as good as yesterday, don't worry about it. Just chill out, put the ego aside, slow it down a bit, try and take it down the octave. We know a lot of tools and how to make something better, but just go, accept that today's not as good as yesterday. Back it off from yesterday, progress it up slowly by putting our ego aside. So that's how we put our mind right. So thinking in a positive way, how do I make this better? How can I improve this? What is today's improvement? What is today's goal? Is how we put our mind right. How we put our heart right is through loving the process, loving the music. So making sure that we listen to music that we love, listen to music that helps us feel emotions, and sharing our gift with others. So that's how we get this right. That's how we get this right. And for a lot of people, giving thanks to a spiritual higher being is also how to get this right for those sorts of people. And by having that and that right, this will take care of itself, because you've got these two sorted.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially as we get to a higher level of skill, I'm not necessarily saying you have to be a world-class player, but when you have your fundamentals in place, I think that getting the head and the heart is then what separates you from everybody else.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know a lot of guys that are tremendous players. I mean, they've got all the chops and techniques in the world, but they get in their head. They get in their head so bad, and they just do all kinds of goofy things to basically set themselves up for failure. They self-sabotage.
Yeah.
It's like, they're the people that like are on the constant equipment hamster wheel. It's like, because like, well, I got to tweak this. I've got to open up this throat. I've got to put this on there. And they're constantly doing these little things, and sometimes they help, but sometimes they don't help. Instead of just, okay, well, let's just get the head clean and focus on what we need to do. And then, other people, their heart isn't right. And, I've always said that I would rather listen to someone play who was not a particularly great technician, who had a lot of soul, a lot of heart in their music, than somebody who could just blow the hell out of the horn, but there was no heart to it. And I think that's the hardest part right now, like you're talking about with COVID. That's been one of the hardest things, is that for most of us, unless you are just a true soloist, most of us, we get our joy, a lot of the joy we get out of music is because it's something that we do and engage with in other people, being on a bandstand with people. So whether it's playing with a piano accompanist or whether it's playing with a full orchestra behind you, it's the energy that you get from being this, taking all these different people and bringing them together to create this one unique moment in time. So yeah, that's I think that's a hard thing for a lot of us to deal with.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, even as a soloist, like when I work as a soloist, it's not about me, so to speak. It's about us, you know? And so like I'll turn up like and I'm sure every soloist that or whenever someone works as a soloist, they're the same. You don't turn up going, I want this exactly like this. This is how I see the music going. It needs to be like this. You turn up with a, I feel like this is how I want things to go. And then when you're working with the accompanist, if whether it be an orchestra or a pianist or even a bongo player, like I did with Street Jam, um, it develops through the communication between you and the rest of the ensemble. So that's so true with all of our music. Like, you know, like how many times do you turn up and play the same set on different gigs, but the energy is completely different. The articulation could be completely different to what you practiced because by the time you get to the gig, the energy from the band, the energy from the audience, the energy from the environment, so the acoustics, the energy from the sound guy, like all of the things that are happening creates this musical spontaneity, which is where that energy comes from. And like at the end of the day, like why do we listen to music? Because it fills us with emotion, right? If we want to be happy, we'll listen to happy music. If we want to feel sad, we'll listen to sad music. If we want to study, we'll listen to music that helps us concentrate and helps us focus. You know, everything that we like, we don't listen to music to, as you say, I want to be blown away by technical work. We don't do that very often. We're inspired by it to develop ourselves. So, like, you know, we don't necessarily go looking for the Carnival of Venice on an instrument we don't know how challenging it is to play. So, you know, an audience doesn't go, I want to hear fireworks on their instrument, you know, like they were in the late Romantic period. They were party tricks or they are party tricks that go on in addition to music. And Sergei Nakarayakov does that incredibly well, but he actually does the fireworks while he's playing, like with like all of his violin concertos that he does and the cello sonatas and all of that sort of stuff. And I saw him live, you know, eons ago when he was in Australia, and seeing him live, he would play the most amazing thing. Like his Rococo variations is so emotional, you know, and beautiful. But then you get to that last page, and I've got the sheet music somewhere, and it's like, it's like, but then he'll get like 3 encores before he goes, okay, I'll play the Carnival of Venice now, sort of thing, you know, where it's like obvious fireworks sort of thing. You know, you know, as I was saying, we're listening to music for emotion, and by being like having that communication within the group creates that musical spontaneity, which means that every performance is different, and every performance is different in a good way, you know, like rather than we're going to do this exactly like this all of the time, which is great in a studio because you know we already know that when people are listening to an album, it's to be listened to differently to when you hear it live. So that precision is definitely there when we were in the studio, which is a very different way of playing. It has to line up perfectly, has to be exactly like this all of the time, and creates that recording energy. And then the live aspect is like, okay, we have to communicate here and here and here and communicate like this and get an understanding of how everyone communicates to achieve the end result. But the end result is always slightly different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's some deep stuff, and man, yeah, I love it because I always come back to music as an art, and
Mm,
art is about emotion and expression, and I think that always has to be first and foremost.
mm,
Everything else is in support of that, and yeah, and all music, like you're saying, you listen to, well, a different type depending on the emotional content. I think this is sometimes where it's so good to be able to listen to a variety of styles of music, not just the mood of music, but there's a certain level of lyricism that you can learn from listening to some more the romantic era music, and then if you want to get the fire, maybe you listen to some Latin music, or you listen to some of the bebop stuff, and so it's like all of it is just a different expression, it's like a different dialect or a different language, or variation of a language, but we're still speaking the same basic language, and that language is
yeah.
music.
Exactly, exactly, and that's where listening is kind of the biggest thing to help us understand all of those different styles of how to approach it, sort of thing. And coming back to coming back to fundamentals, sort of thing. Um, if you don't have good fundamentals, how do you go and do all of those different things? It's like if you've got a flaw in your fundamentals. It's like a painter trying to paint the most amazing piece of art, but there's a massive red ugly blob in the middle of the canvas, sort of thing. So that's why all players, regardless of genre or preferred genre or whatever it is, they all start with the fundamentals, and they all make sure that their fundamentals work well. The words of Michael Jordan, get the fundamentals down and everything else will fall,
Yeah. Well,
I need to
and
put that on my wall, I reckon.
yeah. Well, even like taking that paint analogy, it's
Mm.
like, if you take the red, blue, green, yellow, I think those are the four. Um, if you
Primary
took
colors.
those primary colors, uh, and you really understand those colors, you can make anything with those
Mm.
colors.
Yeah.
When you've mastered your understanding of those fundamentals, then everything just becomes, how do you blend,
Mm.
how much red do you put in, how much blue do you put in, how do you mix it, those sort of things. Then that creates everything. So I think like all of those fundamentals, the production of your sound, your articulation, your flexibility, your range, all of those things are like your primary colors. And regardless of whether you're playing classical or playing jazz, or playing polkas, it doesn't matter, because you've got those fundamentals, and then you can go into that setting and you can express yourself in any way you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good stuff. That is absolutely good stuff.
And the fundamentals don't change regardless of what style you're playing. Like how many trumpet players do you know that practice Clark 2?
Yeah.
Everyone. I've not met a trumpet player who hasn't practiced Clark 2 at some point. Now, the way that everybody practices Clark 2 varies depending on what they're trying to achieve with it. But the fact that everybody plays Clark 2 at some point says that fundamentals of playing the instrument, at the end of the day, what exercises are the same. It's just slightly different approaches to get different results, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, God, we could go on for hours on this stuff.
Yeah.
But I know our time is limited, so we need to get to a couple of our standard segments. And so the first segment that we're going to go into is our sound off, and that is brought to us by our good friend Michael Barkley from Barkley Microphones.
Here's mine. I got
Oh
mine. You
my
got
goodness.
yours?
Show me yours, I'll show you mine. So this is all about sound, and particularly let's talk about your approach to sound, and from your perspective as a teacher. And and not only you're a teacher and you're a performer, and you perform in a variety venues and genres. Um, so how do you teach sound, and how do you help people understand how to tailor their sound to get the most beautiful sound necessary for the job that they have before them?
Usually through listening. Listening. Find a player that you resonate with, and that you like and that you love listening to, and listen to them a lot. And then play, so like I've got one of my students in year 10, he loves the old smaltzy kind of um, cheesy stuff. So like, the Mendez, can't think of it right now. To My Mother, or Trumpeter's Lullaby. He loves that sort of stuff. So
Hmm.
it'd be like, cool. It's like he'll come to me and go, I really love this style playing. Right. Well, here's your recording of Mendez, and we're gonna play, and we're gonna start with To My Mother. Then we'll learn, and we'll just go through all of the tunes that he loves, and he'll listen to those a lot because he loves playing them. So, and then he'll over time of constant listening and constant playing that same stuff, he will adapt to that. So that's pretty much my biggest one with sound. In terms of when you get into that more advanced period, um, normally for sound, it's like, is the sound good? So you want to get rid of any sort of fuzz in the sound. I know there are jazz players who love having that fuzz from time, in that scenario, awesome. But I'm going back to fundamentals in the beginning. You create a nice sound. Nice sound for me has plenty of overtones. It's when it's the easiest to play the instrument. It's in tune, kind of vibe. It has, overtones. You can hear the overtones, And one thing I love to do is I've got this app called Tonal Energy, and you can set it to analysis, and you can actually see how many overtones you have in your sound while you're playing. And one thing I love doing, when I've got plenty of time, is I'll sit there and I'll play my long tones, and I'll go, okay, which overtone do I want to hear the most of? And I will manipulate what I'm doing to try and I'll use the visual thing to see what I'm doing, and I'll try and get that overtone to get to boost higher on my frequency chart, sort of thing. And I'll go, okay, do I like that sound? Do I not like that sound? Let's try and get a different frequency. What do I have to do to get that frequency, that overtone to boost louder, sort of thing? Or, it's a really fun exercise to do when you've got time. But basically, when it comes to sound, it's like, at the very basic level, I find breathe, play just work. So 1, 2, 3, breathe, play. Most of my students who get that, they don't worry about the chops, they don't worry about setting up, they just focus on a good breath in and blowing through the trumpet, and then a nice sound kind of happens through that. So that's the basics. Then it's listening, playing along with recordings, playing pieces from the recordings, sort of thing. All of that sort of stuff is what I do for sound. And then when you go really advanced, it's like using using that visualization sort of thing, and go, which overtones do I want to hear more of on these notes, and try and figure out which ones it is, which frequencies, try and boost those frequencies in the overtones to create the undertone sound that you really like, sort of thing.
Oh, cool. I have to play with that app. You're the second person that's talked to me about that, so
Oh,
I'm going to check that.
it's by far the best tuner metronome app you can get. Like, there are so many features in there. I don't even use all of them, but like there's a drone in there, so I use drones to help me with my hearing, like not like so my internal pitch, sort of thing. So I'll buzz my mouthpiece different scale degrees and chords, like sort of thing, with my drone to help me tune for both equal temperament and true pitch, sort of thing. And I'll play on the trumpet. It helps me tune with my ears rather than tune with my eyes. And then you can use the visual to confirm whether you're in tune. Um, the metronome functions really good. You can set it so that it, after X amount of bars, you can change to different time signatures. Then you can set it to change, like increase speed incrementally for, so you can actually practice time changes sort of thing in different pieces. There's a recording function in it. There's the overtones, different, yeah. One that I pretty much leave it on for a lot of my practice is the sound wave, so you can actually see the shape of all your notes. Am I trying to aim for square notes? So you can say, go right, I want square notes, so I'm ba ba ba, and you get that visualization. It doesn't lie.
Yeah.
Recordings never lie, and to have that instant feedback of what I'm actually putting out, is that's really cool. So that's so many features in that one. Tonal energy, can't recommend it enough, and I think like it's like $5 or something. Probably even cheaper. It's like $7 Australian or something. Where are you going to find a tuner for that price?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I'll put the link to it in the show notes. And so if anybody's interested in that, go check it out. All right. Our next segment is called Geared Up. It's brought to us by Venture Mouthpieces, where technology, design, and craftsmanship intersect. Use the code TrumpetGurus21, get 20, or not 20, get 10% off your order. Doug would kill me if I said 20%. So Trumpet Gurus 21, 10% off your order from Venture Mouthpieces. So Geared Up is about gear, but not the usual, hey man, what mouthpiece are you playing? But about your concepts of gear and recommendations that you would give people that are maybe looking to up their gear game.
Yeah, fun. This one's the worldwide, question. For me, gear is what feels right for you and creates the sound that you want. So what works for me is very different to what works for you. And even if we're trying to aim for a similar sound, similar articulation, all of those sorts of things, different gear will work differently for different people. So for me, I love playing the Stomvy gear, right? And it doesn't mean that it's perfect for everyone, but for me, I love playing their instruments. Now, now like I'm affiliated with them, but I still buy all my instruments, right? Like it's still I buy my instruments because I love playing them. This was my C trumpet, the Stomvy Titan, which is the first one that I bought from them, and for me, I knew instantly that this trumpet created the sound that I wanted, and it felt good for me to play. Regardless of whatever mouthpiece I had at the time or anything of that, it felt good to play. I found it easy to play, so it was efficient for me to play. And I listened to the sound quality, I listened to the intonation, and I listened to the quality of the articulation while I was playing as well. So this trumpet resonated for me, sort of thing. And I'm really happy with how I sound on it. However, I go and spend time with one of my good friends here. He plays Yamaha trumpets, and he loves his Yamaha trumpets, and he sounds great on his Yamaha trumpets. Now, he plays my Stomvies. He's like, man, those are great horns, but I sound the way I want to sound on my Yamahas. And it's because he likes the way that the resistance works really well for him, the way they feel work for him, so he can create what he wants to create because it feels natural for him. So that's pretty much, when it comes to gear, find what works for you as an individual. You can sit there and go, but this person plays that and this person plays that. I remember when I was in the army band, I was doing a lot of lead playing, and for a period. And so I went looking for, like every player does, I went looking who plays what instruments and what mouthpieces, and I'll just get what they do and I'll sound that way on it. And so, I went out and, like, at the time, Wayne was the guy who I was listening to all of the time because, obviously because the job I was doing as essentially a studio musician, because in the military bands, you're playing everything. And
Yeah.
Wayne, being a studio trumpet player, sounds incredible at that. So I was like, works for him. I'm going to go copy it. And at the time, he was playing on a Canstel trumpet, and he had I think it was a Park mouthpiece custom thing. Can't remember. I've lost it now. So I went and bought the Canstel trumpet that had his name on it. I went and bought the mouthpiece that had his name on it, and I tried it. And yeah, it sounded fine-ish, for me, but wasn't the best scenario for me at that time, sort of thing. And then so I went and tried a bunch of different things, and eventually settled on a Bach 43 with I think it was a Bob Finley. Bob, no, not, can't remember. It was a Finley mouthpiece, which worked great for me. Shallow cup, big throat, wide rim, which worked really well for me because most of my playing up until that point was more on the classical side. So I had big mouthpieces, big rims, sort of thing. That setup worked well. So, and it worked well because it felt good for me. So that's what I recommend for people to do. Go to a shop, try out all of the different things that they have on offer, and something will lead them down the path that suits them for that. So, it's good to go, what are you playing? So that you can find out what is easy to access. But at the end of the day, we are all different. We all have different makeup. We all have different. We aspire for different results in our playing, and finding the setup that feels the best for us helps us create that sound that we want.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. Great advice. All right. Well, we have one last segment to get through. And this is brought to us by our friends at Robinson's Remedies. Show your chops some love with Robinson's Remedies. This is our Robinson's Remedies rapid fire rounds, a series of questions that bounce all over the place like your chops at the end of a 6-hour gig. And this is just a lot of fun. So, Phill, I just need your quickest response to these questions. Are you ready, my friend?
Yeah, man.
All right, let's do this thing. First question: who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
Bill Broughton. Yeah.
All right, I guess trombone players count. What
Oh,
is
more for Bill was getting this right and this right.
right?
He was a really strong spiritual leader for me. That that's why.
Yeah,
more for that kind of thing.
for sure. All right, what's your favorite book?
The 4-Hour Work Week at the moment.
That's a good book. What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
Snakes on a Plane.
Oh, Snakes on a Mother Plane. If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
Oh, so many options. Look, the easiest option would probably be working in marketing, but realistically, I'd probably end up I'd probably still be in the military, but serving as something else, like some other aspect sort of thing.
All right. What's your favorite drink?
Gin and tonic in the
Okay.
evening, and black coffee in the mornings.
There you go. That sounds like a wonderful. You don't switch those around. That would be very bad.
I do it on holidays from time to time.
All right. You could have a dinner party, and you could invite any three living people. Any three people in the world could come to your dinner party. Who would you want to invite?
The first one would be my wife. No. Well, no. The first person would be like business wise. I'd be talking to Graham Cochran, who he's got. Yeah, if you've never heard of him, he runs a business called the Recording Revolution, and he was essentially the first guy I came across who does like an online helping people, and that's where I got my concepts for doing online stuff. So he'd be the first person. I would love to sit down with Haken Hardenberger as well, and then I would have to have probably Carl Barron, because you just have to laugh. Dinner. You can have heaps of business, but laughing is what's good for the soul. So
Yeah,
Comedian has to be there as well.
that's a good balanced, balanced group there. All
Someone to
right,
work on with business, someone to work on with trumpet, someone to laugh with.
there you go. All right. So you have three additional chairs at your dinner table, and they're for any three people from history. So any three people no longer with us, who would they be?
Oh, um, this is the tough one. Um, I don't really know, to be honest. Rafael Mendez, for sure,
Hmm.
um, would be amazing. Um, I think um, Steve Jobs would be fun to sit down with, to learn how he turned his dream into a reality, kind of
Hmm.
vibe. And uh, I don't really know. Don't really know who the third would be. Um, yeah, I'd have to pass.
Okay. All right. You always have another trumpet player.
You can, but
Yeah.
look, I mean, the sad one, it'd probably have to be my dad because he passed when I was a little kid, So sorry to bring the down about.
Yeah.
So that'd be my three people.
Yeah, there you go. That's all good. All right. Lacquer plated or raw?
Uh, it doesn't matter, to be honest. I had a trumpet once upon a time that I had lacquered, and then I took the plate, and then I took it all off, so I had raw, and it didn't really matter. For me, I usually play silver trumpets because the silver plating lasts longer. I've got a rotary trumpet that's all raw. You can see back there, but uh, I don't really care if it feels the way I want it to feel and it sounds the way I want it to sound. I'll play it.
There you go. That's a good response. What's your favorite quote?
Get the fundamentals down, and everything will fall into place. The Michael
Uh,
Jordan.
Michael Jordan, put that on the wall. What is your greatest fear?
Heights. I am absolute and utterly petrified of heights. And because of that, I will constantly do things like skydiving, bungee jumping. I will climb the Burj Khalifa. If there is something, um, yeah, if there's something to be done that involves heights, I will make myself do it because I refuse to give in to fear.
Okay.
I'll be petrified the whole time.
Yeah.
It might be a puddle on the floor below me, but I will get up and I will do it because I refuse to be I refuse to have my life dictated to me by fear.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. You could be granted one superpower. What would it be?
Unconditional love.
Okay. I think you already have that.
Nah. Nah. I I
I think
struggle
we're
with it.
yeah, yeah. I think
If
we're
it
all yeah.
really,
Yeah.
like I mean, I have it for my kids, obviously, as any parent will say, but I'd love to be able to look at any person from any walk of life and be able to hear their story and truly feel, um, feel their story, rather than, I can hear words and go, wow, that's a really cool story, or wow, that's a really devastating story, or, but to really feel what it means to them. So I guess it's empathy more than, empathy or sort of thing, to be able to feel someone's emotional journey, and like their journey of life, to really understand where they've come from. um, that to me would be an amazing power to have, because you can get so much worldly experience, and um, you know and like it affects the way that you live everything else, to really truly feel what someone else is feeling under circumstances.
Yeah. That's cool. All right. What aspect of trumpet playing do you feel is the most overrated?
High notes for sure. Too many people think like they aim for this tiny squeal, and this inconsistent high note is my high note. Nah, that's not your high note. Your high note is the one you can play at the end of your 6 hour Latin gig, you know. And if you can't do it then, it's not your high note. You know, they're important. You know, it's important to not have any limitations in your playing, but the amount that people obsess over playing in the upper register, um, you know, maybe it's because, and this is my theory, maybe it's because people don't get the fundamentals sorted in the stave to be able to play up there, so they feel like it's hard because they keep trying to squeal it out with poor technique rather than sorting out your range everywhere else. You know, if you've got good range, if you have incredible efficiency from G in the stave to G above the stave, the G above the stave to the next G is going to come out well. It'll sound fine, you know. But if you don't have good efficiency at that G to G, the next G to G is not going to work, you know.
That's a great concept. What aspect of trumpet playing do you feel is the most underrated?
The making music. Yeah, you know, we focus so much on being technical, that we kind of forget, you know, we kind of forget to play musically often.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's what it's supposed to be about.
Yeah.
You can go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
Oh, don't quit. Yeah, keep going, because I quit for a while. So I started when I was 7. My dad was teaching me, and then when he died, I gave it up for a couple of years, because I hated it when I was, you know, when you're forced to practice. I hated it, but then when I made the choice to practice, I loved it. So for me, it would be, you know, enjoy the process and just keep at it. You know.
Okay. While you're back there, you're going to give your younger self one piece of advice about life.
Yeah. So many pieces of advice. I think it would be, just trying to think of how to word it well. Be more empathetic to people. Yeah, you know, I early on in my career and my adult life, and even as a teenager, I didn't care about other people as much as I should. I was very self-focused, and perhaps it was that self-focus that got me to achieve the things that I've been able to achieve on the instrument. But it meant that I wasn't able to develop musically. So, you know, I lacked a lot of musicality because I wasn't learning from life. Because I was, I was not really caring about where other people were at. Perhaps that was because my childhood, like losing my father when I was very young, was a, you know, that was quite traumatic. So maybe because of that, I was so focused on my own shit that I didn't care for other people. So I think it would be learn to care for other people more than caring for myself. Yeah.
Okay. And final question for you, Phill. What do you want your legacy to be?
As much as I'd love to be known as an amazing trumpet player, I think I'd like to be known as the guy who could do it all, but shared it with everyone who didn't want to do it all. You know, that's why it's the whole point of why I'm on YouTube, is to help people who just want to play in band once or twice a week, but they want to get better. You know, who the guys or the guys or the girls who want to play and want to enjoy what they play, but they want to be their profession. They want to be a good parent. They want to be a good husband or wife, or, you know, they want to live life and be good at what they want to do. So I think, you know, I want to be the guy who could do it all and shared it all.
Yeah. Well, that is certainly a noble undertaking, and you know, I really appreciate your your honesty, and all that you've given us in this episode, this hang. And yeah, I am certainly looking forward to the day that you and I could sit down over a gin and tonic or a cup of black coffee or both.
No, if I can tolerate an American black coffee, Australia here has the best coffee in the world, so
Oh,
challenging
oh,
to live up to that one.
okay, okay. It's like that. The gauntlet has been thrown.
Gauntlet is thrown. Australia,
Okay.
especially Melbourne, has the best coffee in the world. Prove me wrong. Where's my prove me wrong shirt?
You're proving. Okay. Well, it has been an absolute honor to hang with you tonight and today, wherever the time is, who knows. But yeah, please make sure you check out Phil's YouTube channel, like, subscribe, follow him, do all of that good stuff, and the links in the show notes. And yeah, this is a great guy, great talent, and most importantly, a wonderful open heart and willing to share from his experiences. So don't lose out on that advantage. So, Phill, once again, thank you very much, my friend, and thank you for spending time with us on this hang. Make sure that you also like and subscribe to this channel, because we want to keep things going here. And if you have any questions, always feel free to drop me a line, comments, and we love all that stuff. So to close it out, as always, peace and slide grease. We out. Thanks for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating deeper connections through our mutual love of music and the trumpet life. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and also like and share this episode with a friend. We want to see the hang grow for show. Please support our sponsors and consider becoming a personal supporter of this podcast as well. Remember, for less than the price of a bottle of valve oil a month, you can keep this podcast moving smoothly. The Trumpet Gurus Hang is recorded at the Candy Factory, a co-working space and social club located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Jose Johnson is the executive producer. Post-production editing is by Mitch Bowers. Our opening theme song was composed and performed by Lexi Signal, and our closing theme music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. Incidental music is by Ethan Swayze and Jose Johnson. Graphic design by Ann Kirby of the Sweet Corps. The Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast is produced in collaboration with the So Good Lancaster Media Group.